Thanks for listening to Radio Taiwan International. This is Geek Out, and I'm your host, Michelle Chang. What's your cup of tea? What tickles your fancy? Or what floats your boat? Join us as we share passions from people in Taiwan and around the world. Today in the studio, we're joined by my very good friend, Chris Carnahan. Say hey.
Hi.
So, okay, I started this show because I can super duper geek out about really nerdy stuff. I call myself a nerd. Wear the nerd badge with pride. So, Chris, actually, we enjoy very similar hobbies, I think. Games.
Games.
Right, games.
All kinds of games.
All kinds of games.
Or mostly tabletop role-playing games.
Right. Well, actually, first, what I want to talk about is did you always play role-playing games or at least board games?
No, actually, board games were a bit of a turnoff for me at first. Like, you know, the typical board games like Family Night kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, Monopoly.
Yeah, Monopoly, like,
right.
I've never liked that at all.
Oh, super boring.
But then I learned about, like, the bigger board games, like the role-playing board games.
Right.
A little bit role-playing, not so much. But, you know, they have, like, it's very interactive. You have your character, you're doing stuff. Mm-hmm. There's betrayal. There's all kinds of great things going on.
I think a lot of people are most familiar with Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
That is probably the most famous tabletop role-playing game.
Yeah, before that, no, I mean, even like
that.
board games, just like Betrayal on the House on the Hill.
Right.
Like,
so I think that's what a lot of people don't think of when we say something like role-playing games, right? I think my first exposure to a board game / role-playing game was probably Betrayal of House on the Hill.
Okay.
Yeah, very recent.
Yeah.
Not so long ago. Was that yours or?
Pandemic. Those kinds of games where like you
Absolutely.
have like a more interactive, like that was kind of like the intro into it. But then also just very simple role-playing games.
What was Pandemic about for our listeners who have never played?
Pandemic is where you are a virus and you are trying to take over the world. Pretty much like that. But you're competing against other viruses.
Right. A little bit too real right now because, COVID.
You know.
So that's kind of what got us started diving really deep into nerddom. I didn't like your very family style Monopoly or, Trivial Pursuit. Actually, Trivial Pursuit is still pretty good. But stuff like Boggle or whatever gets a little boring after a while.
Yeah.
So games that are more possibly strategic or involve some element of role play, much more fun. So guys, if you guys really like games like Settlers of Catan or Carcassonne, don't be afraid of picking up games that might be a little bit more involved.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which one would you recommend?
So I think Betrayal is a good one.
Yeah. Explain. Betrayal.
So Betrayal on the House on the Hill. It's like, it's kind of Cthulhu-esque, right? There's like dark forces that are possessing somebody. It is a little bit scary. But the cool thing about that one is that the board layout kind of goes as you play along. As you open a door, you open a new tile.
Yes.
You have to put the tile down. So you don't know what the house is going to look like or what you're going to find inside.
Right. You like walk into a foyer and that's how the game begins. All you can see is that first tile.
Right.
And each tile also may have encounters or items and things that you can find.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
really neat.
I forgot exactly what it is. I haven't played for a while, but it is like, yeah, it's like that. It's like you discover as you go, which is more like, yeah, it's like, that's what I find interesting about it is that like the story part. Like, what are you finding? What are you looking for? What do you like surprises?
And each player is actually playing as a character in the game. You get to pick a person.
Yes. I believe so.
You get a character tile that kind of explains things that you're good at and things that maybe you're not good at. Maybe it gives you a little bit of like a photo, right? You get a picture.
Different stats.
And a smidge of backstory. So you get something to work off of. And as this character, you proceed through this mystery location. And what's neat about this kind of game is every game that you play has variation.
Yeah.
Because it is not random, but it can be very different which tiles you add to your map. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good start for people. The thing about that game that I don't like as much is that there's always... So it's called Betrayal on the House on the Hill for a reason. It's because somebody always becomes possessed.
Oh, no.
And then they betray the rest of the group. So then in the end, it always is about one person versus everybody else, which is... I mean, it can be fun. It can totally be fun. But I feel like if there's... Yeah, maybe a little bit more variety as to like people making choices, basically.
Yes.
Right. So not necessarily going to get possessed, but you could choose to be the bad guy.
Right. You could choose to be the bad guy. Oh, dude, guys, I'm a huge fan of villains. I usually find them much more flavorful than being, a hero. So,
Yeah, which brings me to the other one, which is the one we just played, and it's completely blanking out of my mind.
Mansions of Madness,
Mansions of Madness.
I remember this. I remember this very clearly. We were just at your place. We were playing Mansions of Madness.
Yes.
So let's talk about, first of all, Mansions of Madness was originally a board game, right?
It was.
And but the version that we played was interactive on a computer.
Second edition, yeah.
Right.
And they so it's the same game, pretty much. They just added the app that leads you through. So nobody has to run the game. The app does it for you. Yeah, and the scenarios are kind of the same, but it's more of a mystery. So you go there with a mission, and you're with the team, and you're trying to solve the mystery, and then there's the possibility that you also get possessed. But it's not certain.
Not certain. Yeah. And this is also very loosely based on H.P. Lovecraft's material. So very scary.
Yeah,
yes, if you're into horror.
Yeah. The app makes all kinds of creepy sounds and stuff. So
you also bought the minis for it.
They came with it.
Oh, they came with?
Yeah, the little miniature figures.
That's cool.
For each character that you can choose, and then the monsters.
Oh, the monsters, man. I love the monster minis.
It's so good.
Yes, Chris also paints miniatures. I paint, I guess, just random miniatures, but mostly Warhammer 40k Tyranid. They look like bugs. They're horrible. But yes, so if those of you out there don't know, little tiny plastic miniatures of monsters or heroes or anything does frequently come with games, and you can have actually quite a blast just painting those, and then it becomes more immersive in the game because you got a really neat little model.
Yeah, your own customized little character.
Yeah, totally.
It's cool. Yeah, so those are good starting places. But, if you really want to get into like a story-rich, complete customization and feeling like immersed in the character and the setting, then you go for complete tabletop role-playing games.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course. Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons. There are many other ones. I believe Vampire the Masquerade. There's Fate System games, Kids on Bikes. What else? Monster of the Week.
Monster of the Week?
Yep. Can you think of any others?
Pathfinder.
Oh, Pathfinder.
Starfinder.
Absolutely.
Stars Without Number. There's a whole bunch.
There's a bunch. Google.
Savage Worlds.
Yeah, Savage Worlds also. But yes, Google TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games, and a whole bunch of them should come up. But yes, like we mentioned before, Dungeons & Dragons is probably the most famous one that people have heard of the most often.
Yeah, at this point, I think most people have heard.
Most people.
I mean, there's a movie coming out, so it should be okay.
So why do you think Dungeons & Dragons is this famous?
I think it was always the number one, right? So it's always going to be the most famous one.
It did come out in the late 70s, I believe, 1970 something.
Right? Yeah.
So it's really, it's been around for a long time.
It has a history. It went through like the Satanic Panic and everything. Totally. Yeah. So it's like, it has its history. And like, I think it's what people chose when it started getting popular, basically. When the groups like Critical Role, when TV shows or radio shows, podcast shows, whatever, like Geek and Sundry, when they started to push new content.
Yep, they chose
for Dungeons
and Dragons, right? Yeah. Critical Role at this point, I think, is the biggest, most money-making live stream or just a video. They're professional voice actors who get together and play Dungeons and Dragons, and you can watch.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest, most famous group at this point.
Oh, for sure, by far.
Yes. So followed by groups like Acquisitions Incorporated. Do you watch any others?
Yeah, I used to watch a couple. There are a couple of other groups, but I mean, honestly, if you've heard of anybody, it's going to be Critical Role, just because I mean, even their campaign, their Dungeons and Dragons game, their first complete game, went so popular that they were able to create a cartoon about it.
Oh, yeah.
And get it funded more than $1 million for the whole season, and then it got bought out by Amazon. So that's how popular it is.
Yeah,
and
that's
now they're
how
making
big.
a movie, not about them, but Dungeons and Dragons.
I perhaps fangirl over Matt Mercer, who is the Dungeon Master, Game Master in a Critical Role. Definitely huge fangirling. You've met him.
I did.
I remember seeing this picture you showed me of you meeting Matt Mercer. That's ridiculous.
It was such a happy accident. We were at Comic-Con in LA. He was not scheduled anyway to be on any forums. He wasn't even supposed to be. Yeah, he wasn't. He was on a forum.
Okay.
About mental health, TTRPGs and mental health, but he wasn't listed because he didn't want to draw attention to himself. And we just happened to be watching a game in the next room, and my friend was like, "Oh my God, he's over here! He's just right over here!" So we were like, we squeezed in, and like he was really cool. He ended up hanging out and talking with us. And
that's awesome. That's really cool. So okay. All right. So a lot of people at this point, maybe they don't play Dungeons and Dragons. Let's try to explain what it is.
Right.
I believe, well, there's a couple of ways that you can play this game. They do, this company, Wizards of the Coast, which recently had, we'll get into that later. There's a little bit of controversy here. But still, they publish adventure books. So if you don't want to make up your own story, which is called homebrewing, you can simply buy an adventure in a book, and somebody, the game master, dungeon master, will run a group of people through this adventure. Each of these players will roll up a character that they will continue to play throughout the adventure. So
unless they die.
And then they roll up a new one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. And usually the name rhymes,
Or sounds exactly the same.
So you have, I would imagine, DM'd or dungeon mastered more often than you've played?
Yes.
It seems so at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way more.
But which do you like better, to be the player or the game master?
At first, I actually, when I first started trying to play, I hated it. Like being a player.
Oh, okay.
Being a player. I like DMing more for the most part. But now that I've DM'd enough, I'm like, I can kind of let go and relax when I'm a player. Yeah. Like, I don't take it so seriously. It depends on the game. Because, the thing is, the reason I like it so much is because you really get to tell a story with your friends.
That's the best part of this game, I think. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of goofing around. You don't have to be serious, but some parts it does get really serious and you get attached to those characters.
Dude, I have cried.
Right.
I've cried multiple times playing Dungeons & Dragons. And not because somebody dies, but, your characters will go through character development that it can be very emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have a good imagination, it's like watching a movie. You'll cry at a movie sometimes, right? It's the same thing, except this is your character. You're literally, part of yourself is in that character. It's mostly you.
Do you have any really great stories about an emotional situation that has happened in a game? Please tell us.
My wife, Sylvie, when we were playing a game, we were going through a game where her character, she wrote this. So her character's backstory was that she was separated from her dad, thought he was dead or something, but actually they got separated in a war. And basically he came back. And they had met each other and they were working stuff out. But she, before they worked anything out, got trapped inside. Basically, they were in a death dungeon. It was I didn't build this dungeon, okay? It was pre-built to kill people.
Okay.
And she got into that dungeon. She got into this trap and she had to make a choice to get out. It was okay, we'll boil it down to 2 levers. Okay. You pull one lever, you die. You pull the other lever, you get out.
Oh, wow. And, but you don't know... You have no idea which one's going to be.
So she was taking the advice from there was a monster or whatever inside the cave that was telling her stuff, and she had to choose whether to trust the monster or not.
Ooh,
right?
Okay.
And you can do these things called insight checks in the game.
Yeah.
Which she did, but it wasn't 100%.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh, this is scary.
So me playing her father as the non-playable character, the NPC, jumped into this area with her.
Oh, man.
And said that they will make the decision together. So they will either die together or get out together.
Oh, man.
Because he wanted to make up for the rest of her life. And as they were pulling the lever, she was so scared to lose her character and her father or whatever, her fake father.
Right, her fake father.
Yeah. And then she started crying because she felt the sense of isolation because the rest of the party, all of our friends, right, they're just watching. They can't interact because they're not in the scene. So it's just her and me. Whoa. And she's pulling this lever. She doesn't want to die. And then she just starts crying. And I'm I see my wife crying in real life and I start crying. So yeah. Yeah, it gets intense.
Man,
it gets emotional.
It's super intense. Yeah. Dude, okay. So I've got one myself where I play Dungeons and Dragons, in person and also on Discord where you can play by post. You write with other people.
Right.
So right. The dungeon master of that game my character was not the brightest. He's
a theme,
a
actually.
cat folk. Yes, right. I like playing dumb characters. They're so cute.
They are really good.
Okay, so this guy, he's a kid. He's boy cat folk tabaxi. Barbarian, and he defeated a foe and took his maul. It's like a big bludgeoning weapon, right? Kind of like a warhammer. It's a rock on a stick. But it turns out that this weapon started talking to him with a little girl's voice. So as a not bright boy, he just thought that this was maybe a friend, right?
Okay.
New playmate.
Sure,
great. And every once in a while, the dungeon master would have me make wisdom checks, charisma checks, just roll some dice and tell me what the number is.
Okay.
And I'm like, as a player who's at this point a little bit on the experience side, I was like, oh no. But my character, he wouldn't understand what this is, so he just kept playing along and talking to this voice. And then eventually he failed the check. What that means is you roll a 1, the lowest number that you can roll. And then at that point, the sentience that was in the weapon took over his body. He smashed the head in of his best friend / older brother figure in the game, and then ate his brain.
Wow.
I'm sorry, guys. That might have been a trigger thing. I should have warned you about that, right?
Intense.
Right. Super duper intense. Like, he killed his brother friend character dead.
Yeah.
And then I was doing this during dinner. I was having dinner with friends, and this post came through, and I'm like, I couldn't eat. It was just I started having not panic
anxiety
attack, but anxiety, just a thing at dinner, because I'd been playing this character for a couple of years at that point, and a year and a half, something like that, very invested, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is happening. There's like a super death, and talk about emotional psychological damage from the boy being forced to do this. He's conscious and like watching this happen.
Yeah.
So Dungeons and Dragons can get super intense.
It can, and that's part of the good thing about it. I mean, some people enjoy that, or it can just be be very like remote a little bit. Like, you don't have to invest yourself in the character. Some people play games where it's totally strategic, and it's just like they don't care about the character. They go through like maybe a whole like list of them before the campaign is over, and then it's like
and then which also brings me to the game that we were playing with you, which was mostly just hilarious shenanigans.
I was just gonna say, then there's our games where like you're running up like a mountain made of gumdrops.
It was so fun though.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
But yes, I think that's a lot of the beauty of Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games, is there can be a huge broad range of the type of game that you want to play. Yeah. There's something for everybody.
Yeah, and there's like, people, they approach it different ways. So like we tend to we care a lot about like the characters and setting and stuff like that, even if it's ridiculous. But some people just get drunk and play Dungeons and Dragons. That's another way to do it. Basically, totally. It's something to do with your friends when you're sick of talking about like politics or TV or something.
Right. I do have a question for you though, because recently, because of COVID and the whole pandemic, a lot of people were prevented from meeting in person to play their Dungeons and Dragons or other game. But what wound up happening, I found, was these people went online and they found all the other nerds who also play this game, and I feel like the community exploded.
Yeah.
How did you feel? I'm sure we were all kind of depressed at the beginning of the pandemic watching this stuff happen.
Oh, it was great for me. I got to stay inside. Yes. But it was like, it's true. Like, it was already blowing up before, like in around 2018, 17 or whatever is when it first started going huge, right? Everybody was talking about it. Like, it was on Twitch with Critical Role and other groups, stuff like that. Twitch is a live streaming service, by the way, if you don't know.
Yes, tell us your channel. What channel?
Oh, ours? Oh, yeah.
Plug yourself.
We do stream, or we used to stream for taking a break, but it is Carney Sideshow. We have a lot of TTRPG content there, but it was like so it was huge, and then COVID hit. And people at first were super depressed because they couldn't get together to play the game. But then, luckily, there was already services there, online services, that already had it set up so you could play. You can control your character digitally on a map.
Maps.
Yeah. Right? And you can do all like fun stuff. And like it blew up online.
Absolutely.
Like crazy.
It did.
Discord groups started going huge, or just even like whatever, Zoom, when it started, like when it first came out during the pandemic, people were using Zoom to play, or whatever.
So being, I guess also nerds already, they used the internet and all of this, either software or tech or whatnot, to expand their resources.
Yeah.
So it became, I think the pandemic was a boost to the game.
It was for sure. Yeah, it was for sure. And then of course the end of the pandemic was kind of a drop off for the online stuff.
True.
For the most part. But the game's popularity has remained super strong.
Yeah. So I think, so one more time. I know we're on a break right now, but which channel should we be watching?
Oh, yeah. Carney Sideshow.
Yes.
Carni Sideshow. All together.
Absolutely. And I think the great thing about your channel specifically is it's not just Dungeons and Dragons.
No, yeah.
It's a variety show.
It is. So we're still thinking about the content when and if we come back this year. It might be a little bit more because as much as we love the TTRPG thing, it was always more about the entertainment, the creativity. So we have like people, because they play TTRPG, they also draw characters and really good art or make music for games and or stories.
We've done a thing where we have dice rolling chaos tables for cooking food.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was super entertaining.
Michelle is a great cook, by the way. Don't let her tell you any different.
Oh, no.
It's so good.
No.
So freaking good.
Hey, I'm glad you ate that pasta that we made. That was very
weird.
It was
okay.
It was curry and chocolate sauce and other stuff.
Yeah. For random rolls, by the way, if you don't know, a random roll table is like, so you use dice in these TTRPGs, typically 7. And all different numbers.
Yeah, I've mentioned before, guys.
You have?
If you need dice, please visit phoenixdice.com for all your adventuring gear needs.
Yes.
But yes, you roll these dice, and then
if you have a table, whatever you roll will tell you what you're going to use. So usually in the game, it's like, oh, you get a prize, and this happens to be like a magic sword. But we made a table for food with weird ingredients, and because we're in Taiwan, some of those ingredients were like, like century egg or stinky tofu or whatever, pig's blood cake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it ended up being a bit tricky.
Thankfully, we did not roll all of those weird things at once. Yes,
we didn't. But we did roll. What did we end up rolling? It was a curry.
It was
fish oil,
egg,
pasta.
Yeah, fish sauce, curry, eggs, pasta with chocolate sauce and hot stuff.
Yeah, and there was like a pumpkin.
Oh, there was pumpkin in it. That's right. It was. I'm very flattered you ate it.
Yeah, no, it was all right.
But right. So, TTRPGs and all of this, Dungeons and Dragons culture has expanded to affect a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
We'll keep talking about this and all of the, Twitch streaming and Discord stuff that's been happening lately in our next episode. Tune in. Thanks for coming in, Chris.
Thank you. That was great. That went by so fast.
We'll be back next week.
All right.
And thanks, listeners, for tuning into Radio Taiwan International. I'm Michelle Chang, and this has been Geek Out.